Joining us now, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Democratic Majority Whip, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. Senator, good morning. It's great to have you on the show again. Tell me about your impressions of this first week of hearings. We'll have our third today focused on Mike Pence and the pressure that Donald Trump and others applied to him and try to get him to overturn the results of the election. What do you make of what you've seen so far?
I can tell you it's a very convincing case. They've collected a mountain of evidence, and they're presenting it in a very thoughtful way, an organized way. And I watched the initial hearing, the 2-hour hearing, from start to finish. I knew most of the facts going in, but there were revelations that came about because of their good work. As chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, we've done some work ourselves. What I've done is turn over the work product to the January 6th committee. I think that's the place where they can gather everything to make this presentation to the American people. And let me tell you the bottom line here. This is historic. It is important that we pay close attention to it. We tried to create a bipartisan commission, not of members of Congress, but of experts, just like the 9/11 Commission. Senator McConnell and the Senate Republicans vetoed that idea. I think that was a mistake. But luckily, the January 6th subcommittee has come together, and they have the participation of two individuals from the Republican side, one Adam Kinzinger from Illinois, and of course Liz Cheney. I salute both of them for their courage, political courage, and stepping up to make sure the American people know the facts.
Senator, you all tried, as you know well, to set up a bipartisan commission on the Senate side, and Republicans refused to join that effort. When you talk to them privately, you've worked with many of them, you're friends with many of them for many years, do they concede to you? Do they confess that, yes, what happened on January 6th was terrible, and that they are watching these hearings along with the rest of us?
Well, I can tell you the first thing they do is they look at their shoes, because they can't look you in the eye and explain why they've taken this position. And the second thing that's very clear to me is that they know that they are afraid of Donald Trump and his impact on the Republican primaries. If he turns on them, they can lose their political office, and they're not prepared to do that, even at the expense of not being credible to the rest of the country.
You are the chair of the Judiciary Committee. As you watch these hearings unfold, do you see evidence of crimes committed that should be referred to the Department of Justice?
Well, I can tell you I want the whole body of evidence to be presented first, and I'm sure the Attorney General is watching closely, as he should. Whether this has reached that threshold of criminal culpability is an important decision. It has to be made by the Department of Justice. But I will tell you the mountain of evidence which they're presenting to us, I think, is conclusive to me personally. I hope that those who have to make the decision on criminal culpability see it the same way.
I want to ask you about Ginni Thomas. We just continue to get more information coming out about the fact that the wife of a Supreme Court justice who voted as a lone dissenter in a case involving the insurrection, involving the attempted overthrow of the United States government, her name continues to come up in emails and texts actively calling for the overthrow of the legitimate president-elect, whether it's through texts to Mark Meadows or emails to Trump lawyers or contacts that she made with state legislators telling them that they had a power they didn't have, which is to overthrow the popular will of the people in their state and send up phony electors to Washington, D.C.
Joe, I think there are 3 points I want to make quickly to you. And one is the role of spouses to people in high political office. Spouses do not give up their rights as citizens to vote, to speak, and so forth. But there is a context that they have to be very carefully to be sensitive to. And that is whether or not they've crossed the line into influence or impact on policy. That is an issue that's raised over and over again.
It seems she's crossed the line. That seems fairly simple, does it not?
Well, I can tell you that's the second point. The second point is, as far as Mrs. Thomas is concerned, she clearly was not just exercising her constitutional rights. She was deeply personally involved in what appears to be an effort to overturn the election in the last cycle. That is a serious matter, and it raises a question as to whether the Supreme Court justice she's married to should recuse himself from all matters related to this. There is a clear conflict of interest. The last point that I want to make is is the institution of the Supreme Court has been under attack for a long period of time. There was a time when Scalia as well as RBG were approved by the Senate with overwhelming margins. Even though they won very conservative and one more liberal, they were given votes of 80 and 90 plus number of senators. Those days are gone. And now we have this question raised with Jenny Thomas. The integrity of the court, along with the leaking of the Alito opinion, is really an issue at this moment.
Senator, on the subject of why this matters with the January 6th hearings, a document allegedly given to the leader of the far-right militia group, the Proud Boys, before January 6th, details plans to occupy more than half a dozen Capitol buildings using covert tactics. The evidence was filed in federal court yesterday by a defense lawyer who claimed his Proud Boy client had never seen it. It lays out in detail a plan to rush government buildings with, quote, patriots and communicate our demands. The document plans specific roles for participants. It calls for leads and seconds to act as sleepers to let people into the buildings. It reads, have leads and seconds open the doors for the crowds to enter. This might include causing trouble near the front doors to distract guards who may be holding the doors off. The document lists their main objective as a free and fair election. That's in quotes. It reads, quote, the evidence of election fraud is overwhelming. We demand that on January 20th, a new election is conducted, not a recount. The Department of Justice indicted the former leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, and several other members on seditious conspiracy charges earlier this month. But, Senator, do you think that the January 6th committee and people in general understand, and are they communicating effectively enough how close we came?
Well, I can just tell you this. I've watched what they've done so far. I've been very impressed by the collection of the evidence and the presentation of it, and there's a lot more to come. It's far from over. When we took over the Senate Judiciary Committee in this cycle with President Biden's election, one of the first witnesses before us was the director of the FBI, and we asked him the greatest domestic threat to the United States today, and he said it was these white supremacy, white nationalist groups. Now, the Republicans in Congress have been in denial. They refuse to accept this reality. But we have had hearing after hearing that have demonstrated the emergence of these groups, their power and their danger. You know, we use the phrase overthrow the government of the United States and think, well, that's preposterous. That could never happen. We came perilously close to that moment because of Donald Trump and his determination to ignore the will of the people. And these groups are his, as he says, stand back, stand ready, whatever his quote was. That tells me that these were the folks that he was going to count on in the extreme to execute their plan. I think it's up to the January 6th committee to present all the evidence, but I'm convinced, having voted for his impeachment over this issue, that Donald Trump played a personal role in the emergence of what happened January 6th.
Stand back and stand by, he said at a presidential debate. The Proud Boys said their membership tripled after he said that. Senator, I want to get your insights on another issue, and that is this attempt by a bipartisan group in the Senate to write some new gun laws in the wake of the shootings in Uvalde and in Buffalo. What can you tell us about what's happening in that room? We hear some optimism from Senators Cornyn and Murphy, both who clearly are working together trying to hash out some of the details here. Where do you think the country ends up, and what does the law look like in the end?
Well, I can tell you, Chris Murphy called me last Sunday after the framework was established and asked if I would have some of the key staffers on my Senate Judiciary Committee help them draft the legislation. I said, of course, and that's been underway this whole week. There are 2 or 3 issues that they're working on. They are important. I really am optimistic. I feel that we've reached this point. We have buy-in from the leadership in the Senate on both sides of the aisle. I think we can get this done. There's some tough measures to be drafted, but that's what we do here. We draft legislation. We reach compromise. I think it can be done, and I've got my fingers crossed that come next week we can see this on the floor of the Senate.
What do you say to so many people in this country, Senator, who look at the polling on issues like red flag laws, on universal background checks, on raising the age to buy a semi-automatic rifle to 21 and say, we're glad Republicans and Democrats are working together on this, but the end product really isn't going to get at the problem of gun violence in this country?
What we're doing is necessary, but it's not sufficient. When it comes down to these assault weapons and the fact that there are millions of them in circulation in the United States and that 18-year-olds can purchase them, even though the framework addresses background checks for them in more detail, we know that there's much more that needs to be done. The really decision as to whether or not that's going to take place is in November in the election. People have to decide who they want to make these decisions in the months to come. This is not the last of gun safety legislation, and it isn't the end of gun violence in America, but it's an important start.
All right, we'll be watching to see where this ends up. Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. Senator, thanks so much as always for being with us.
Thanks,
Mika?
Willie.